While the rest of the country was suffering through lockdowns and millions of Americans lost their jobs, Cody and Robyn Brown presented a very different image of themselves. On our television screens, they seemed like victims, struggling with financial pressure and a strained family. Sobbing interviews, stressful debates about mortgages, and the threatening shadow of unpaid bills were the headlines. But recently released government documents and insider accounts reveal a much darker truth. This family did not just weather the pandemic. This family may have profited from it. What is presented as a tale of struggle could be nothing more than a sophisticated scam, an outright deceit on the American public. Ponder believing a family's hardship, only to discover that it may be a charade. As we dissect each of these documents, each piece of evidence, and each jaw-dropping revelation, you'll start to see the Browns in a whole new way. It's 2020. COVID-19 has closed down economies, shut down streets, and left people wondering about their futures. In Flagstaff, Arizona, though, the Browns were playing victims of the same pandemic, claiming their money was on the line. On television, Cody and Robyn complained about their $1 million mortgage and the sky-high expenses of empty land in Coyote Pass. They spoke of cutting back, sacrifice, and holding on by their fingernails. Their performances were convincing, a lesson in staged victimhood. The cameras don't always show everything, though. Something else might have been happening in the background, however, something not for television but for the United States Small Business Administration. Back in the spring of 2020, Cody Brown Family Entertainment LLC borrowed and was granted a Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, loan for approximately $137,000. On paper, all seemed well. Businesses nationwide were seeking assistance during the pandemic. Questions, though, came to mind at once. What payroll? What employees? The majority of Brown family businesses, from a Utah gym to a Parowan bed and breakfast, were faltering. Worst of all, Robyn's My Sister Wife's Closet, a bright online startup in its early days, had long since gone dark, with dead websites and abandoned social media profiles. It all looked so real on screen, the Browns on-screen struggled to get by. But as investigative journalists and internet sleuths dug deeper, the discrepancies started to look less like bad management and more like outright fraud. Federal lawsuits charged that the $137,000 loan was just the start. Cody and Robyn allegedly employed ghost payrolls and cooked up business activity to qualify for other government funds, receiving at least $275,000 in relief intended for struggling Americans. The accusation is severe. Browns could have defrauded the federal government on forms, claiming dead businesses as flourishing companies that require subsidization by taxpayers. To understand the scope of this alleged fraud, one has to see through the TV reality show facade and into the realm of financial science. Instantly, excessive spending, Flagstaff's large estate and a new luxury truck, are less about poor taste and more suspect evidence of tainted financing. While the other members of the Browns family, like Janelle, lived in modest accommodations, there stood a stark and frightening contrast. Money that might have benefited ordinary Americans instead may have lined the Browns' nest. The scam, prosecutors alleged, rested on quantity and confusion. During early 2020, the SBA was inundated with thousands of PPP applications, and the Browns claimed that 10 people were employed at My Sister Wife's Closet, being paid from government loans, was the key to the case. Those employees were referred to as ghost workers, and those numbered only Cody, Robyn, and a few of the older children. At its core, this is the story of a national shame potentially exploited by two reality TV stars. Every sheet of paper, every loan application, and every piece of evidence tells another tale other than the one we were made to believe on television. As the inquiry advances, Brown's world grows increasingly questionable. Were they as desperate as they said they were, or were they embarking on one of the most outlandish deceptions of the pandemic era? The more investigators looked, the worse the picture got. The employees listed on the Browns' loan applications were largely non-existent. While some family members were indirectly involved in the business earlier, prosecutors alleged no one of them was actively involved by 2020. They weren't taking orders, making jewelry, or counting inventory. Put simply, the company was a shell revived on paper only to qualify the firm for government assistance. The alleged scam continued from there. Cody Brown Family Entertainment, the LLC through which the Browns are compensated by TLC, was targeted by the second of the alleged instances of fraud. Though legitimate, prosecutors say Cody and Robyn inflated employee numbers there as well, including their adult children, who weren't performing salaried work, on the books as employees in a bid to qualify for additional government funds. These payrolls were entirely fictional, a legal fiction designed to route money directly from the U.S. Treasury to the Browns' wallets. The heart of the case is the fundamental lie of need. PPP and EIDL funds were intended to be used by businesses in existential crisis, restaurants, salons, and retail outlets whose bottom line had collapsed during lockdowns. Cody and Robyn's main venture, a reality TV show, was barely struggling. In fact, the pandemic likely boosted their revenues, as millions of Americans turned to TV for distraction and entertainment. Ratings remained high, new seasons were filmed, and TLC checks simply kept coming. To the government, their claim of financial hardship wasn't just false, it was intentional to cash in on a national crisis. The investigation gained momentum with the issuance of federal subpoenas. Small Business Administration Office of Inspector General investigators, along with the Department of Justice, meticulously reviewed bank statements over years, tax returns, corporate filings, and mail related to the Browns' loan applications. They followed all transactions, examined all accounts, and revealed what sources have described as a seeming pattern of suspicious behavior. The most damning evidence came straight from the PPP application forms themselves. In those forms, Cody listed 10 My Sister Wife's Closet workers and specified the payroll figure to be paid out. By signing the form, he swore it was true under penalty of perjury. Prosecutors say it was no mistake, it was an act of calculated fraud. Every statement on that application was a potential federal offense, a knowing misstatement for the purpose of getting cash to which they were not entitled by law. To further solidify their argument, the government introduced expert witnesses. Among them was David Chin, a former senior fraud investigator for the SBA, who walked the court through the application step by step. He indicated glaring red flags: the business had sat dormant for years, the number of employees was somewhere it seemed too neat to be believable, and key documents, payroll journals, tax returns, bank statements, either did not exist or were fabricated. Chin concluded that these were not the moves of a desperate entrepreneur, but of people exploiting a stressed system for personal gain. Finally, the government requested testimony from Cody's own children, Pete Don and Kelty Brown. Their court appearances stunned the fan following, showing that this was no longer a reality show on television but an actual court battle exposing the family's internal cracks. They approached the stand, one at a time, to swear and to tell the truth, a truth directly opposite to that which Cody and Robyn had been feeding the country for years. The trial turned personal when Cody Brown's own children were brought in to testify. McKelty Padron was the first to be called. The U.S. attorney addressed her in gentle tones, but her answers sliced through like a knife. She confirmed that My Sister Wife's Closet was her mother Robyn's business, but when asked about working in 2020, she stalled. Sure, years ago, she had done some work as a teenager, posing for jewelry on the site, but in 2020, she had no regular paycheck, no scheduled hours, and no W-2 filed. When presented with the federal loan application listing her as among 10 employees, she shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't know," she whispered. Pedden Brown testified even more damningly. He was candid and blunt. In 2020, he had no interaction whatsoever with the boutique. He never received paychecks, never lived in Flagstaff, and never worked for the company for nearly a decade. Shocked to discover his name might have been used to acquire government money, Pedon's testimony painted a chilling picture. These were not only ghost workers, they were Cody's own children, allegedly used without authorization in a federal government scam. The jurors were forced to confront a harsh reality. If Cody would lie to his own family, why on earth would the government ever consider believing him? This testimony had transformed the trial from a straightforwardly technical case of finance to a raw, human drama. The family life, previously the domain of reality TV voyeurism, was now the subject of intense federal scrutiny. Cody's carefully constructed character as patriarch and head of household started to crack, replaced by the possibility of a man who would manipulate his own children for his own ends. Then the spotlight fell on Robyn Brown, the matriarch at the center of the financial storm. In court, she was the woman she had portrayed on TV, gentle, delicate, and crying. Her lawyer walked her through a tale of devotion, suffering, and resilience, showing her to be a doting mother and wife under siege by the pandemic. "My sister-wife's closet," she said, "was more than a business. She had it been a dream of hers that she refused to kill." But you. Attorney Jessica Morales dismantled that claim with step-by-step precision. Morales verified Robyn's signature on the PPP loan application and then went further. The application had named 10 employees, all whose livelihoods were at risk due to the pandemic. Could she find a single non-relative employee who had indeed received a check? Robyn faltered. The judge saw her struggle as Morales walked her through step by step, presenting the facts. Bank records indicated an $80,000 withdrawal from the PPP loan just 2 days after posting, paid not to employees, but into Robyn and Cody's home mortgage. This was public money, meant to protect jobs and earnings, spent on a $1 million mansion while other relatives strained financially. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted, sympathy gave way to tough contempt. Cody's own testimony followed, a contrast to Robyn's meltdown. He arrived belligerent and defiant, portraying himself as a rebel standing up for his family against the world. He claimed the pandemic destroyed his large family business, held my sister-wife's closet as a successful venture, and insisted he was merely attempting to safeguard employees and family members alike. His action came across like a reality show confession, laced with charm and charisma. However, under Morales' cross-examination, the illusion dissolved. Confronted by the image of his own signature on the loan forms, the illusion of control and assurance fell away to reveal a man exposed to the jury, his credibility at best questionable. The courtroom drama culminated when Attorney Jessica Morales stood before Cody Brown. Even though Cody vowed under oath that my sister-wife's closet employed 10 people, he fell back on his usual routine. It was a family business, and all were an employee in one way or another. Morales would not compromise. She brought up the fact that his son, Pedon, had testified under oath that he had never received a paycheck. Cody's face turned red as he accused his children of being brainwashed by their mother and dismissed their accusations as a miscommunication. Morales pressed Cody harder, equating Cody's claims of financial ruin on national TV to his steady, six-figure paycheck from TLC. Bank records and video of his program showed a cruel reality. As he portrayed himself going deeper in debt, his family was thriving, and taxpayer money meant to save jobs was being sent to fund his own home loan. The prosecution dramatically pulled apart Cody's alibi, revealing a man and not a patriarch who is attempting to protect his family, but instead as one of those allegedly plotting to carry out a carefully thought-out scheme for selfish motives. The false loans were not only an error, they were the climax of an entire sequence of years of deception. Money meant for the entire family benefited Cody, Robyn, and their children, while other wives and relatives had to scrape around, living in motorhomes or selling their properties. The dishonesty wasn't limited within the family, it targeted straight at the center of government trust. The Paycheck Protection Program, designed as a national lifeline for struggling Americans in a time of crisis, had been employed as an individual cash buffer. During closing arguments, Morales laid out the evidence step by step. She cited the affidavits signed under oath on the applications, the ghost payroll full of their own children, expert certification of textbook-level fraud, and the bank statements showing taxpayer dollars spent on luxury mortgages. "These aren't struggling entrepreneurs," she said. "These are two people who thought their fame would shield them. They were wrong. Today, hold them accountable, for the money, for the trust they shattered." It took less than 4 hours for the jury to return a verdict that shocked the courtroom. Cody and Robyn Brown were guilty on all counts, conspiracy to defraud the United States and assorted counts of wire fraud. Shock and astonishment spread across Cody's face, and Robyn cried. Their meticulously choreographed public personas, the contestants on a reality program, were completely discredited. In sentencing, the judge sent a definite message: during a national emergency, the Browns had seen opportunity, not challenge. They had spent relief money in crisis on themselves as their own jackpot, defrauding both their fellow citizens and the system designed to help people in a crisis. Cody and Robyn Brown were each sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, had to repay the $275,000 in fake loans, and were fined an additional $500,000. The so-called king and queen of the Brown family fiefdom were humbled. Their next chapter would be authored not in a Flagstaff mansion, but the cells of a federal correctional center, a sensational end to an epic story of greed, deception, and betrayal that had captivated the nation. For Christine and Janelle, the courtroom verdict wasn't just a judicial ruling, it was the final vindication. For all those years, they had been manipulated, silenced, and economically marginalized, convinced that their concerns were irrelevant and their sacrifices invisible. They had watched Cody and Robyn construct a personal empire behind closed doors while the rest of the family struggled to get by. Now, the world finally knew. Cody and Robyn were not only notorious reality TV stars, they were convicted federal criminals. The patriarch who had demanded obedience and loyalty was found to be a garden-variety thief, and the fairy tale life that had ruined a family was being built on lies and pilfered money. While Cody and Robyn were hauled into custody in handcuffs, there was a new narrative to spin. Christine and Janelle were no longer the wives who left, now they were the wives who escaped. They had saved themselves and their children not just from a broken home, but from an illicit business. Their fight, their agony, and their tortured decisions were now looked at in a different light, not betrayals, but survivals. In the end, it was their most glorious triumph. The Brown family saga, as the world had known it, was finished, the devastation of deceit behind and the serene, hard-won liberty of the women who had finally broken free.